In criminal justice, cases involving teenagers can be particularly surprising. When young individuals commit heinous crimes, it raises questions about their motivations and the beckoning need for rehabilitation.
I just want to tell y'all, I'll be home soon. R.I.P. Keon, I love my family.
But watching you sit there, smile, laugh, and shake your head like this was no big deal.
From violent assaults to murders, these teens shocked their communities so much that people wondered if they had a conscience. Explore these mind-blowing cases and examine the consequences faced by these young offenders and the impact on their lives and the lives of their victims. 20. Shanell Jackson. How will you face the audacity of someone heartlessly taking the life of your beloved child and then smiling right in your face during a court session? That's exactly what the family members of Nathan Potter, a University of Wisconsin-Madison film student, had to endure. On July 6, 2010, 21-year-old Nathan was returning to his Riverside apartment near campus when 18-year-old Shanell Jackson and his accomplice, 19-year-old Derek Thomas, attempted to rob him at gunpoint. But Nathan didn't have any money on him, so these geniuses decided to shoot and kill him instead. As Nathan cried out for help with his last breath, his cold-blooded killer left him to die. During the trial, Shanell's true colors emerge. He oozed pure hatred and even went so far as to leer at the grieving family members of the victim, including Nathan's young siblings. When his life sentence was officially handed down, he threw an epic tantrum that took multiple cops to control. Meanwhile, his family members were wailing in the background, adding to the chaos. To bring Shanell down, they even have to resort to using pepper spray. The court staff can be seen diving under desks, desperately trying to avoid the fumes. It's like a scene out of an action movie, but unfortunately, it's all too real. 19. Wright. What on earth was going through this guy's head standing in front of a court in Ann Arbor, Michigan with a grin on his face? And why is he there? Well, let's zoom into the past a little. Jordan C., a beloved senior at Pioneer High School and a star football player with dreams of attending Michigan University, had his life tragically cut short. On that fateful day in October 2016, he was found dead of a single gunshot wound to the head. The whole community was in shock. How could such a bright and innocent young man meet such a gruesome end? The investigation led to the arrest of 3 teenage suspects: Wright, Delano Gracie, and Jairus Ellison. Fast forward to June 2017, and Wright casually admits to killing Jordan C. during a robbery gone wrong. No remorse, no regrets, just a casual confession. Throughout the trial, Dan continued to display a shocking lack of remorse. When it was his turn to address the court, Dant had the nerve to say, "I just want to tell you I'll be home soon. I love my family." Thankfully, the judge wasn't having any of it. Dant's lawyer attempted to apologize on his behalf, blaming his actions on emotional challenges and suggesting that his smile might be a display of fear. Nice try, but no one was buying it. In the end, Judge Schwartz handed down a sentence of 23 to 50 years in prison for Dant's gruesome murder of Jordan C., 18 Jeremy and Willard. This story started with Jeremy's deep-seated grudge against his high school Spanish teacher, Noima Graber, who gave them a bad grade. Armed with a bat, like some sort of deranged baseball team, Jeremy and Willard decided to stalk poor Graber during her innocent daily walks in the local park. They unleashed an absolutely brutal attack on Graber, beating her to death. The investigation kicked into high gear, with law enforcement officials working tirelessly to gather evidence and build a case against these twisted individuals. During the trial, the prosecutors laid out a compelling case against Jeremy and Willard, highlighting the overwhelming evidence stacked against them. The court acknowledged the sheer brutality of the crime and the need to send a strong message against such violence. Jeremy cried and was deeply battered in the courtroom as he apologized to the family of the deceased. The judge, Sean Showers, had the unenviable task of determining the appropriate sentence for Jeremy. He considered various factors, like Jeremy's age, immaturity, and his failure to grasp the gravity of his actions. The court also took into account his clean criminal record and the potential for rehabilitation. Jeremy was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. 17. The Hiccup Girl. Living with disabilities often attracts public pity, but what happens when it becomes a bait for trapping unsuspecting victims? Meet Jennifer Hiccup Girl, the unexpected superstar of the Hiccup world. She appeared on national TV shows, like NBC's Today Show, multiple times, all because she had a case of hiccups that lasted longer than the memories of your grandma's stories. In 2007, when Jennifer was just a 15-year-old girl, her uncontrollable hiccups shot her to international fame. She was all over the TV, hoping to find a cure for her hiccuping madness. And that's how she earned the catchy nickname, Hiccup Girl. Fast forward to October 2010, and Jennifer, together with her sidekick Laren Rayford and her former flame Newton, started an online robbery. Their criminal escapades took a deadly turn when Jennifer lured 22-year-old Shannon Griffin, whom she met online, to an abandoned house. Little did he know, Jennifer's two friends were waiting there with a loaded .38 caliber handgun. It was an ambush, and poor Shannon was shot 4 times and robbed of his money. Fortunately, arresting this criminal trio wasn't exactly like solving a quadratic mystery. They were all living together, making it quite easy for law enforcement to nab them. A few hours after Griffin's lifeless body was discovered, the handcuffs were slapped on their wrists. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When she heard that crushing sentence, the look on her face was like someone who just got hit with a reality brick. It finally sank in that her life had taken a seriously wrong turn. She cried out, probably wishing she could hiccup her way out of this mess. 16. Brenda Spencer. This is the story of a 16-year-old girl named Brenda Spencer, who caused a whole lot of chaos and kept the police on their toes. You won't believe the craziness that went down. Back in the day, on that fateful January 29th in 1979, Brenda Ann Spencer decided to unleash her inner Rambo. And where did she choose as her battleground? Her own house is right across the street from Grover Cleveland Elementary School. Armed with a .22 semi-automatic rifle, which she conveniently received as a Christmas present, she started firing at anything that moved. Students, staff, you name it. Tragedy struck hard as 8 innocent children, 1 brave police officer, and 2 adults fell victim to her shooting rampage. When the authorities asked Brenda why she committed such a heinous act, you won't believe her response. She simply said, "I don't like Mondays." Can you imagine it? Now justice had to be served, and Brenda Ann Spencer faced the consequences of her actions. She was found guilty of murder and a bunch of other charges, and the judge threw the book at her with a sentence of 25 years to life in prison. Can you guess her reaction when the sentence was handed down? Zilch. Nada. Not a flicker of emotion. She just sat there like it was another day at the beach. Maybe her prison experience will make her a better person. 15. Evan Miller. There is no hiding place whatsoever for any criminal juvenile, even the youngest of all. If not caught today, posterity is waiting with bated breath. Such is the case of Evan Miller. In Alabama, troubled teenager Evan Miller committed a brutal crime at 14 years old, beating Cole Cannon with a bat and setting fire to his trailer. The U.S. Supreme Court later ruled that mandatory life without parole sentences for juveniles were unconstitutional. However, in 2021, Evan faced a second life sentence without parole. Judge Mark Craig believed the severity of the crime outweighed Evan's age and troubled childhood. He dismissed pleas for rehabilitation, declaring a life sentence without parole as the only just punishment. Evan, now 32, appeared via video link from prison, his expression filled with regret. His case serves as a tragic reminder of the irreversible consequences that stem from a single night of horrific choices. 14. Nicholas Lindsay. The law will definitely not find it funny with anyone who plays with her defense cops. On February 21, 2011, Officer David Crawford responded to a call about a suspicious person near Tropicana Field in Florida. The caller reported seeing a man holding a brick in his backyard who had jumped over a fence. Officer Crawford arrived at the scene and encountered the person, but moments later, an exchange of gunfire occurred. Officer Crawford was found lying near his cruiser with multiple gunshot wounds and was pronounced dead. A massive manhunt kicked off, involving over 200 officers from various agencies. On February 22, 2011, 16-year-old Nicholas Lindsay was arrested after community tips led the police to a house. Lindsay initially provided conflicting accounts, but eventually confessed to the crime, including disposing of the weapon in a nearby creek. His mother, Deneen Sweat, suspected his involvement and encouraged him to tell the truth. Lindsay was booked into the Pinellas Juvenile Assessment Center. Lindsay eventually confessed to the crime and was indicted for first-degree murder by a grand jury. In March 2012, he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Lindsay's lack of remorse was evident when he grinned in the courtroom during the reading of his sentence, which deeply affected Officer Crawford's daughter, Amanda. Despite an appeal, his life sentence was upheld, leaving Amanda grateful for the justice that was served. 13. Candrea Cook. Candrea Cook, an 18-year-old Daytona Beach high school student, had initially been sentenced to 20 years in prison for carjacking and battery charges. However, she has now been allowed to withdraw her plea, and the sentence has been thrown out. Candrea Cook, at the age of 10, was involved in 2 carjacking cases, along with her then-boyfriend, Kendrick Bass. They were accused of using a dating app to lure a man and his friend to South Daytona, where they attempted to carjack them. During the incident, Kendrick shot the man, who survived the attack. The initial sentencing of Candrea Cook gained attention on social media in June 2017, when she was originally sentenced to 20 years in prison. A video of the courtroom shows her mother's shock and distress upon hearing the sentence. Candrea broke down and had to be carried from the courtroom, apparently losing consciousness. However, Circuit Judge Ma Foxman allowed Candrea to withdraw her plea and overturned the sentencing. The judge cited a miscommunication between Candrea and her assistant public defender, Frank Scott. At her second sentencing, Candrea did not cry, and her mother did not display the same emotional outburst as before. There was no need for Candrea to be forcibly removed from the courtroom, as she knew what to expect. Candrea Cook has now been sentenced to 11 years in prison, and Judge Foxman also ordered her to serve 20 years of probation, which will run concurrently with her prison term. This means that she will be on probation even while incarcerated. 12. Dylan Shoemaker. On March 19, 2013, a tragic incident occurred involving Dylan Shoemaker and his girlfriend Ashley Smith. Dylan was taking care of Ashley's 2 young sons while she was at work. However, upon her return, she discovered that her older child, Austin Smith, had been brutally murdered. Such a painful sight to behold. Dylan Shoemaker, who was 16 years old at the time, was living in Springville, New York, with his mother and Ashley Smith. Investigations revealed that Dylan had severely beaten Austin, which resulted in his death. In December 2000, during the court proceedings, a tearful Dylan apologized to Ashley in the courtroom, expressing that he never intended to harm Austin and certainly did not want him to die. However, the jurors did not believe his apology, and he was found guilty of second-degree murder. Austin's grandfather, Michael Smith, pleaded with the judge to consider their family's feelings during Dylan Shoemaker's sentencing. Dylan's attorney argued that his difficult upbringing and anger issues made him ill-equipped to care for the children. However, the judge contemplated the potential risk to the community if Dylan were to be released after serving a 15-year sentence. Dylan Shoemaker was ultimately given a sentence of 25 years to life in prison without the possibility of parole. 11. Denali Bremer. Denali Bremer lived in Anchorage, Alaska. Now, Denali wasn't your average Alaskan gal. She had a taste for danger and a knack for finding herself in the most troublesome situations. While surfing the internet, Denali stumbled upon an online message from a mysterious character who went by the name of Tyler. Tyler, who claimed to hail from the faraway land of Indiana, had a wild proposition for Denali. He promised her a fortune, several $million to be exact, if she would just do him a tiny favor: kidnap and murder a certain Cynthia Hoffman. Denali, being the thrill-seeker that she was, couldn't resist the allure of fast cash. She quickly devised a plan that would make any Hollywood heist movie proud. She lured Cynthia into a hike through Thunderbird Falls, a scenic spot known for its breathtaking beauty and, apparently, its dark secrets. As Denali and her accomplices ventured into the Alaskan wilderness, They bound poor Cynthia with duct tape. It was like a twisted game of hide and seek, but with way higher stakes. And just when you thought things couldn't get any stranger, they decided to document the whole ordeal. Yes, folks, they turned their criminal escapade into a real-life episode of crime scene selfies. Little did Denali know, the authorities were hot on her trail. The Anchorage Police Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation joined forces to solve this mind-boggling case. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. Denali stood before Anchorage Superior Court Judge Andrew Peterson, ready to face the music. She pleaded guilty to the charges, admitting to the wild and wacky tale that had unfolded, slamming a total of 99 years in prison sentence. 10. Terren Andres. Back in 2008, when he was just 20 years old, Terren was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. It all happened during a failed carjacking when Terren, under the influence of PCP-laced marijuana, took the lives of Avelina Diaz and an innocent bystander named Kim Fang Vu Bui. Now, Terrence's case made its way to the U.S. Supreme Court, but the court found Terrence's counsel ineffective for not properly investigating and challenging the state's case against him. It was a series of specific failures that undermined his defense. However, despite the Supreme Court's ruling, a Texas court openly defied their opinion and reinstated Terrence's death sentence. The Texas court argued that Terren hadn't proven prejudice, meaning he hadn't shown that the ineffective counsel had a significant impact on the outcome of his trial. They disagreed with the Supreme Court's determinations and rejected their findings, leading them to deny Terren the relief he sought. It's a fascinating and controversial case, with the highest court in the land finding the defense counsel deficient, only to be openly defied by a state court. 9. McKenzie Chilla. McKenzie Chilla, also known as Hell on Wheels, unleashed chaos on the streets with her Toyota Camry. She crashed into the Pitco building in Strongsville, instantly killing her boyfriend Dominic Russo and his friend Davin Flanagan. Before the tragic incident, Chilla had exhibited troubling behavior. Videos recovered from Russo's phone revealed heated altercations, with Chilla degrading and threatening him. She even threatened to crash her car while driving with Russo, showing signs of a deteriorating relationship. The crash itself seemed deliberate, as Chilla chose an opportune time and an unfamiliar route. Despite surviving the accident, she showed little remorse. In fact, she callously asked authorities to suspend her license for a decade, displaying a shocking disregard for the lives lost. During the trial, Chilla maintained her innocence, claiming no recollection of the events leading to the crash. However, prosecutors presented damning evidence, including her celebratory TikTok videos shortly after leaving the hospital. It became clear that Chilla lacked remorse and was disconnected from the severity of her actions. The trial concluded with a guilty verdict. The judge, Nancy Margaret Russo, described Chilla as literal hell on wheels and emphasized that the deaths were not a result of reckless driving, but premeditated murder. Chilla was sentenced to 2 concurrent terms of 15 years to life. 8. Martis Fuller. In May 2021, Martis Fuller received a life sentence for the brutal murder of his high school ex-girlfriend, Kaylee Juga. Kaylee, a popular cheerleader and honor student, lived in Kenosha, Wisconsin with her parents. Meanwhile, Martis, who was also 15 years old at the time, attended the same school as Kaylee and played football as a quarterback. Their relationship took a dark turn, with Martis exerting control over Kaylee through sexual and physical assault. After being together for only months, Kaylee reached her breaking point and decided to end the toxic relationship. She reported Martis to the school authorities, which resulted in his expulsion. Losing everything, his education, the love of his life, and even respect on social media, Martis became consumed by anger. With a feeling of having nothing to lose, Martis began plotting Kaylee's murder. On May 9, 2019, he broke into Kaylee's home in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where she and her mother, Stephanie Juga, were packing for a camping trip. Martis shot Kaylee 5 times, killing her and injuring Stephanie. After the incident, Martis surrendered to the police. The community was terrified, and there were calls for action to address gun violence. Martis was charged with murder, attempted murder, and burglary. He pleaded not guilty, but was tried as an adult. Throughout the trial, emotional testimonies were given, and Martis showed remorse at times. The jury found him guilty of first-degree intentional homicide. In the end, Martis received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. 7. David Anthony Pargo. On a fateful night 2006, Leland Washington, a promising college student, went to a Halloween party with his friends. They had no idea that danger lurked there. The party was organized by a gang, but Washington and his friends had nothing to do with it. As the party continued, an argument broke out, and Washington and his friends were told to leave. They left, hoping to stay safe. But later, thinking the situation had calmed down, they returned. Little did they know, their return would have devastating consequences. David Anthony Pargo, a member of the gang, saw their return as disrespect. He confronted Washington, who had nothing to do with the earlier argument. In a senseless act of violence, Pargo pulled out a gun and shot Washington 4 times. Washington's dreams, his bright future, were abruptly shattered. After the shooting, instead of seeking help, Pargo tried to cover up his crime. But Washington's friends refused to abandon him. They rushed him to a nearby police station and then to the hospital. Tragically, it was too late. Washington couldn't be saved. Years later, Pargo stood trial for his heinous act. Representing himself in court, he faced the consequences of his actions. The judge described the killing as senseless and foolish, robbing a young man of his promising future. In the courtroom, Pargo turned to Washington's grieving mother and apologized after bagging a whooping 50 years prison sentence. He knew he could never undo the pain he caused, but he expressed deep remorse for what had happened to her son. 6. Rios. In February 2018, 2 individuals from Texas were convicted for the murder of a man from Metro Atlanta. This tragic incident highlighted yet another senseless and irrational act of violence. The events unfolded on May 1, 2017, when Vicente Cruz, a 44-year-old resident of Ostel, mysteriously disappeared after a meeting related to his car advertised on Craigslist. Concerns grew as no one knew his whereabouts. Eventually, on May 22, 2017, authorities discovered Cruz's lifeless body hidden in the bushes. The community was left wondering what had happened to Mr. Cruz. After months of thorough investigation, the FBI revealed that Gilbert George Moran had a connection to Cruz's death. They also uncovered the involvement of another individual, Rios. It was discovered that Rios had killed Cruz due to a drug deal gone wrong. During their meeting, Cruz initially brought a friend along, but later asked the friend to leave, saying that the prospective buyer, Rios, needed some time to examine the truck. He promised to contact her afterward, but the call never came. The missing vehicle was eventually found abandoned in a motel parking lot, with Cruz's blood inside. Rios chose not to disclose the details of what happened that day or the reasons behind why he killed Cruz. However, he was sentenced to spend the rest of his life behind bars. Throughout the sentencing process, Rios remained stoic, showing no emotional cues. After the sentence was read out, he cooperated with deputies and walked out of the court. Today's subscribers pick drags us into a courtroom scene that captures the raw emotions and stark contrasts of 2 teenagers facing the consequences of their actions. In the first, we witness an image frozen in time. One teenager, with wide eyes brimming with disbelief, caught in the grip of shock as an outrageous sentence is announced. Just a few feet away, there stands their counterpart, a mischievous grin playing on their lips. This other teen, seemingly unfazed by the severity of the sentence, can't help but burst into laughter. Her reaction borders on the absurd, challenging our preconceived notions of how one should respond in such a solemn setting. Reeling through the epics that brought these teens in the courtroom is an adventure you won't want to miss. So get ready as we reveal the true crimes of these teenagers and why the hands of law couldn't show an inch of pity. Do they deserve their punishments? Or is the law being unnecessarily cruel? Tell us what you think in the comments section. 5. Tyler Scraggs. Tyler Scraggs was charged with a DUI, driving under influence, in a crash that resulted in the death of a girl in Greenville County, South Carolina. In a recent hearing, He pleaded guilty to the charges, acknowledging that it was a bad choice and showing no remorse, according to prosecutors. At the time of the crash, Tyler, who was 18 years old, was under the influence of methamphetamine. The crash occurred on Taylor Road in Greenville County in November of the previous year. Tragically, Haley Kell, a 16-year-old passenger in the car, passed away several days after the accident. During his sentencing, Tyler received a 10-year sentence with credit for time served. At the time of the sentencing, he had already spent 267 days in custody. In court, Tyler expressed remorse and stated that he wished he could have taken Haley's place. Several of Haley's friends and family members were present in court during the proceedings. The lawyer representing Haley's family revealed that Tyler's toxicology report indicated the presence of methamphetamine, THC, and amphetamines in his system at the time of the crash. This information further supported the fact that Tyler was under the influence of drugs during the tragic incident. 4. Jaredcono. Jaredcono from Tampa, Florida, has been sentenced to 15 years in prison for plotting a bomb attack at Freedom High School when he was 16 years old. His attorney had requested juvenile sanctions and rehabilitation in a mental health treatment program, but Circuit Judge Kimple Fernandez decided on an adult sentence. Judge Fernandez acknowledged that it was a difficult case, as she had to consider whether Jared was genuinely serious about carrying out the attack, or if he was a confused boy making empty threats. Canela Senor expressed surprise at the harshness of the sentence, and mentioned that in similar situations, judges often want to review additional information that may not have been addressed in court, such as psychiatric reports or polygraph tests. He also mentioned the possibility of filing an appeal in the 2nd District Court of Appeal, disputing the judge's decision not to dismiss Jared's most serious charges. Even though Jared did not directly threaten anybody, he was charged with threatening to discharge a destructive device, as well as attempting to make, possess, throw, place, or discharge a destructive device with the intent to harm. His plans were kept hidden in his room, with only one friend being aware of them and eventually notifying the police. 3. Alexis Rogers. Alexis Rogers, a 19-year-old woman, was involved in a deadly road rage shooting case. During a hearing to determine if she would remain in custody until trial, her attorneys argued that the incident was not her fault. Alexis entered the courtroom crying and continued to cry throughout the proceedings. According to deputies, Alexis was driving a black Mercedes in the South Valley on the night of March 20th when the driver of a Dodge Challenger made a left turn in front of her and then returned to the same course. This led to an altercation, and Alexis allegedly chased after the Dodge. During the confrontation, her passenger, 16-year-old Damon Luna, pulled out a gun and shot into the other car, resulting in the death of 16-year-old Efren Arti. After the shooting, Alexis and Luna fled together, traveling to Texas, Nevada, and Colorado. During an interview with a detective, Alexis explained that she didn't come forward after the murder because she claimed to be scared of Luna, alleging that he had been physically abusive towards her. She also mentioned that she was under the influence of the anti-anxiety drug Xanax on the night of the incident. The pre-trial detention hearing was postponed until the following week to allow Alexis's new lawyer to familiarize themselves with the case. It is unclear whether Luna, the accused shooter who is 16 years old, is in a relationship with Alexis, who recently turned 19. 2. Willard Miller. Willard Miller, a 16-year-old from Fairfield, Iowa, was charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit a forcible felony in the killing of his high school Spanish teacher, Noima Graber. Along with his classmate Jeremy Goodale, Willard was accused of killing Noima Graber with a baseball bat on November 21, 2021. During Willard's sentencing hearing, he appeared emotional and cried throughout the proceedings. His attorney requested a lighter sentence, but the judge considered several factors in making the decision, including Willard's young age, the high level of premeditation involved, and the fact that he acted alone without any external pressure to commit the crime. The judge ultimately sentenced Willard to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 35 years. Jeremy, the co-accused in the murder, also pleaded guilty and was prepared to testify against Willard. Jeremy's sentencing is scheduled for the following month, and under his plea deal, prosecutors will request a mandatory minimum of 25 years. 1. Julio Cesar Rivera. Julio Cesar Rivera, a teenage carjacker, was sentenced to 45 years in prison for a series of armed carjackings that occurred between October and November 2021 when he was 18 years old. He was apprehended with a gun in hand after shooting Alana Castaneda in the face during a failed carjacking near a Whole Foods store at Alamo Quarry Market. Earlier this year, Julio made a deal with prosecutors that resulted in him pleading guilty in 3 cases, including the one involving Alana. The plea deal reduced the potential prison sentence Julio could have faced if he had been convicted at trial. However, it also meant that he waived his right to appeal the sentence. During the sentencing, Alana was present in the courtroom and requested that Julio receive the full 45-year sentence. She testified that she had already undergone 3 surgeries and was about to have a 4th to help correct her vision. The 45-year sentence brought her to tears, as she felt it was not just for her, but also the other victims involved. Prosecutors revealed that Julio typically targeted women during his string of armed carjackings, which took place at various locations, including a gas station, a car wash, and North Star Mall. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.